Hello, my name is Doug Smith, and welcome to the 8 March 2013 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. My guests today are Town Administrator John Klimm and Town Planner Gary Crosby. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The topic we're going to discuss today is the upcoming town survey. And John, I know you've been advocating for this survey since you got here, really, for the past year. Why is the survey so important?
Well, if you think about it, we asked the taxpayers and citizens of this town to fund a budget of $50 million. The question rises as to whether or not we have a real good fix on what their likes and dislikes are, and we are still a relatively small community, but we're at a point now where probably no one individual has a good pulse on the feelings and the likes and dislikes, the preferences of a majority of our citizens. And so I instituted in the community I came from, and I brought that whole concept here, that annually, we should reach out to our community to ask them what they think we're doing well, what they want to see improved, what services they think we should expand, which services should be eliminated and the like, to really pull them into the decision-making process. Because no one of us, as I said, has a true fix on the sentiments of our community. And so having committed to do that, then the next question is, well, what tool do you use? What methodology do you use to reach out? In the olden days, you'd just go in the coffee shop and you'd know enough people to get a good fix. But more communities are seriously thinking about doing surveys, and that's what I proposed to the town council, who were unanimously in favor of supporting that. The argument that I use is that we're asking our taxpayers to come up with $50,000. Is it really too much to take 10 or 15,000 of that to ask them what their preferences are, so that we're making decisions that correspond to their likes and dislikes? And so the other thing too is that it isn't a one-shot deal. You don't want to just do it one year. You want to do it every year, ideally, so that you can track their preferences and then you can react to what their responses are to try to continually improve our operation.
I know there are various kinds of surveys, starting from walking around door to door,
Sure,
or putting things online. What kind of survey is this? Gary, perhaps you could address that.
Yeah, this is going to be a random sample telephone survey. We decided that this is the industry standard for gathering statistically valid samples is a random telephone survey. When we first started thinking about doing this, we put out a competitive RFP, and we attracted 4 or 5 respondents. The company who is going to do this is the Center for Research out of Meriden, Connecticut. We intend to try and get 600 full responses. That would give us a margin of error of 4%. Doing a survey like this, the margin of error is an interesting thing to talk about. Obviously, you can reduce the margin of error to 0 by polling everybody in town. You get 100% response, so you know exactly what.
Yeah.
The trick is to try and find how few people you can ask the questions and still get a response which is reflective of the entire town. That's the margin of error as a population as a whole. The 600 respondents that we're looking for, it gives us a margin of error of 4%, a 95% confidence level. Now, a margin of 4% means, and I'm going to have to read this because this is, I want to get this right. If a poll has a margin of error of 4%, that means that if you ran that poll 100 times, asking a different sample of people each time, the overall percentage of people who responded the same way would remain within 4% of your original result in at least 95 of those 100 times that you asked it again. So you want the number of responses, 600, gives us this 4% margin of error. You see this on polls on television all the time when they talk about the margin of error. 4% is a good balance between the number of respondents and
statistics is not my forte, and I'll take your
nor
word
is it
for
mine, and I'm sure that there will be.
But that's the
somebody
confusion. A lot of folks say, well, you're only getting 600 responses, and we have over 17,000 residents. And the key is the randomness of the sample.
To make it statistically valid.
Absolutely. We're using the same methodology that Mitt Romney and Barack Obama used during the last presidential race. I mean, it is the standard in the industry.
And it's a matter of getting a good balance between, you can asking too many people, or you can, again, this 100% response, or just exactly how it's bang for the buck, basically.
Sure. So you've got the company. When is this going to start, and how will it work?
They're going to begin. They're going to put the survey out in the field beginning March 18th. They've acquired a list of telephone numbers, and they will select, it includes both landlines and cell phones. They will select 600 as their target, and they'll start calling. They intend to call between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. Weekdays, and between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. on Saturdays. No Sunday calling. They will, if they get a busy signal or nobody answers, they'll call back up to 8 times to try and get a response from that particular telephone number. It will show up on your phone as an area code 203 number, Meriden, Connecticut, if you have caller ID, and it may say Center for Research. Now, the person who the person who will be calling, they have a call center, and they have interns who will be
so
making
these are
this
people, real people,
yes,
as opposed to a robocall.
there is a script. I have there is a script that they go through, and it starts out, "Hello, my name is so-and-so. I am a research assistant at the Center for Research. We are talking to residents of Portsmouth on behalf of the town about their quality of life, local issues, town strategic planning process, and the satisfaction with community services. This is not a sales call. Your response will be confidential," and then go from there. So they'll introduce themselves.
So we're not
politely
keeping people's names. And so
No.
if people are concerned about confidentiality, there won't be any database or document that says that Doug Smith said this. It's only going to be connected to a phone number, and all of that is confidential. So if there are concerns about confidentiality, that is being protected.
Okay, so this bank of telephone numbers, they're just randomly selecting a 600 to start
Yes.
with?
Yep, and they'll keep going until they get 600 full responses.
How long typically does it take for somebody to go through the questions?
They say that it'll be about a 10 to 12 minute survey.
Okay, 10 to 12 minutes.
And
I think that's fair.
they say that they will be able to complete the 600 responses in a week or so. So,
so by the end of the
going
month.
to be, they're going to be very busy. And
What's great about that is that we'll have the information in time for the presentation of the budget. So we will incorporate the results of the survey in our recommendations for the budget this year.
Yeah, so it'll be useful right away then, we think.
Absolutely. Yep.
What kind of questions generally, could you just, some random questions, for example, just to give people a sample of what they might be asked?
There's some basic questions that we start with, and then we get into some quality of life issues that I'll let Gary talk about. But first they'll be asking about why people have made choices to either stay here in Portsmouth or move here. We're trying to ascertain what it is that has allowed individuals or families to make a decision to stay or to move here. And also, just in a general sense, to rate the quality of life, whether people in a general sense are pleased with the quality of life here in Portsmouth or not. We move from that to a whole series of questions about residents' satisfaction or lack thereof with a variety of town services and programs. So they'll go through a menu and ask whether or not people are pleased with this department or that department or whatever, and people will be able to let us know how they feel about those programs. Then we get into questions about whether what services would they like to see improved or eliminated or expanded. And so it'll really give our citizens an opportunity to give us some really valuable information about what their assessment or evaluation of the town services are and where they'd like to see improvements. We asked questions about over the last year whether there have been contacts with various town departments and what their experiences have been to find out whether or not customer service is as high as,
Sure.
as it should be. And then we ask a series of questions about how our citizens get their information, whether it's through the newspaper or
Yeah.
through TV
I'd
programs
be very
like
interested
this.
in seeing
It really
that.
will be, because it'll give us an opportunity to try to expand or to improve that. Then there's a whole area that I'll let Gary talk about that we're going to incorporate in our consideration of the comprehensive plan. In other words, what people's visions are for the future of our town.
Yeah, we when we were talking about the kinds of questions that we wanted to ask and getting the advice from the survey company, we of course wanted to have the sets of questions about basically how we're doing, you know, what are people's satisfaction and so forth, and then I was of course lobbying for a whole lot of questions about to help me with the update of the comprehensive plan, where we think we were going and so forth. So I think we've achieved a pretty good balance of that. There's quite a few questions in here that are about what people think about the vision for the future and about what they think are the top 3 priorities for the town. There's a question in here about do you agree with where development in Portsmouth is currently taking place, or would you like to see it located elsewhere? Get to people to talk about the zoning, you know, whether they like the...
In general terms.
In general terms, absolutely. And that's the thing about this this survey is the script here. This is you're going to be asked these questions by a person, and they're going to, you know, their job is to code your responses, and so we can do some analysis and so forth. But there are quite a few in the way of open-ended questions that they will be able to code and give us some good results. And so I think that and a lot of the questions here this one are framed in such a way: do you strongly agree? Do you somewhat agree? Do you strongly disagree with this particular statement? And so a statement like, I am in favor of economic development, even if it compromises some of the rural character of the town of Portsmouth, we can get a sense of how people feel about the balance and where we ought to go in the future.
Now, will the questioners, the people that are asking the questions, kind of, you know, clarify it? If they're not quite sure what the answer is, they'll come back to you.
Yeah.
I think that's the real value of having a person as opposed to some other way of doing it.
If they have difficulty in trying to fit the answer into a particular box, you know, to code it in such a way, that's why a telephone survey is so good, is that it allows for the flexibility of answers that way.
Yeah.
So,
And what will be recorded are the answers, not so much the individual numbers. So there's no issue of privacy particularly.
Absolutely, that's correct. The answers are going to be recorded, and then they undergo a statistical evaluation, and we get an analysis of the results.
I think this is a great thing. We probably needed one of these, you know, for a long time, because I think many of us feel that the character of the town is changing. We just don't know how exactly.
Well, I think one of the things, too, is that we intend to do this on an annual basis, if we can, so that we can see over time. And it will be basically the same questions. There will be,
tweak it as you
depending
go.
upon the issues that come up on an annual basis, we'll tweak it a little bit. But doing it on an annual basis and using the same sorts of questions will give us invaluable.
You know, people really
trends.
have been alienated in all levels of government. They feel a detachment or whatever. And this is a sincere effort on our part to reach out. And so we hope that our citizens will seize the opportunity, take the time to respond to the questions, because we are taking this very seriously, and that is the reason why we're doing it. where you know, you hear all too often people say, you know, it doesn't, I'm not going to go to a meeting because they don't listen anyways, and they don't even care what I think, and so for all of those comments out there, this is a sincere effort regularly to reach out, to let our citizens have a forum to tell us what they think about what we're doing or not doing, so that we can make improvements.
Yeah, and I hope the viewers of this program, and presumably it'll be publicized or whatever elsewhere, consider that taking 10 to 12 minutes of your time, this is a very small investment for a very big payoff for the town. And you know, I think people need to think about these kinds of things and be prepared to kind of give them their straight answer. Once the survey is over, it's completed, everybody's put in their stuff, does this stuff get analyzed or somehow correlated, or how do you all get the data?
We will get a nice big thick report with graphs and facts and figures on summarizing all of the results.
And we'll put it on the website. And
Yep.
Okay, so the results will be public?
Absolutely, and I have every expectation that the council will be very interested in hearing the results. And,
Sure.
and it's not only the results; it's a plan to do something with the results. And so I've told all of our department heads that it isn't. I'm not looking to find out whether people's numbers are better than the police department or the public works department or whatever. The question is, whatever the numbers are, however people feel about our services, the real issue is what are we going to do about it to improve it. So we will have a program of continual improvement here from year to year, and there'll be a way to quantify our success or failures in a wide variety of areas. But this isn't just winging it. It's actually having information and documentation in terms of how people feel and whatever, and then our responsibility is to do something with that information so that we can continually improve our community.
Yeah, I see a very big use of this, as you say, in the comprehensive plan to try to give us a sense of those really hard questions like what kind of a town are we? And what kind of services do we want, and things like that. And that's a big part of what you're doing. I know when you start to put that unbelievably complex, comprehensive plan together.
Yeah.
But I think this should give you some good hard data.
Absolutely,
to work with.
absolutely.
We're going to get into areas such as tax burdens. We're going to be asking people whether they think that you know what their assessment is of how much taxes they're paying in comparison to the services that are offered. So it'll be really interesting in that whole arena to see what people's responses are.
And I think one thing that's important about this type of survey is that it will give us a accurate picture of how people feel. It's not as though it's a self-selecting survey where you only get people who respond in a certain way, and this will be a good snapshot of town.
Now, you mentioned earlier that this is something that a lot of towns use. It's not just unique to here. And John, you've used it before in your communities.
Well, quite a number of communities nationally are using these tools. It's surprising that in New England more communities don't do that. And the truth is that, you know, I've had many conversations with my brother and sister town managers, and it's surprising some of their reluctance. You know, sometimes you get the feeling that people don't want to know what the answer to the questions are, and
which could be true.
Yeah. But I mean, we need to be transparent. We need to make our citizens know that we value their input, and we're going to respond to it. But if you don't ask the question, if you don't have a baseline to work from, you know, I'm struck that even if you look at our budgetary process, that there aren't enough, you know, there isn't enough standards set from year to year so that there is a process of continuous improvement.
Yeah.
This will allow us to do that.
Well, I saw that, and I think a lot of us saw this in the DPW funding for the road support. You know, this is our main infrastructure that we have in town, and to sort of not fund it for a couple of years didn't make sense. And I think that should come out loud and clear. Absolutely. I would think in a survey how important the roads are and things like that. So do you have any messages you'd like to tell people? You know, people are going to see this thing. It'll come up Connecticut, Meriden, Connecticut, 203 area code. I watch that, and if it's a telemarketer, I either don't answer or whatever, but I'll certainly keep an eye out for this one. But I think people should want to take the time, because this is in their interest, to take the 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it takes, to give their answers to this thing. It's a way to input. And I think that's a great way, and I thank both of you for coming up with this great idea.
Well, the other thing, too, is that we'll go through the process as long as it takes to get 600 responses. And my message to citizens would be, we really care what you think. And if you don't participate in the process, then someone else is going to be speaking for you. And we just hope that people know that when they see this during this week, that it is funded by, it is one of our sponsored programs, and that is being done so that we can improve what we do.
I don't know if it's appropriate or not to ask what the cost of this might be, but I
It's
probably should.
$15,000.
That's all.
And that's within the budget. We didn't get 15,000 more. We found, and so that's an argument that I made last year, and that is, within a $50 million budget, my argument to the council was we should be able to find $15,000 so that our citizens can tell us what they like and what they dislike. We're asking them to give us $50 million a year. We should be able to find $15,000 to allow them to give us input so that we're making decisions based on their feelings.
Do other Newport County towns and cities like Newport or Middletown, do they do this, for example, yet?
I'm not aware of, I believe that I've read recently that Newport has done some type of survey, but I'm not aware of any community in Rhode Island that does an annual survey and that they have committed to over a period of time.
Well, it's only taken us 375 years to come to the point of asking the people what they want, but so I think it's a real step in the right direction.
Yeah. One of the things that we learned from this company, I think the science of this is just rock solid. This is the way to go about doing this. And one of the things that they talked about with us is being able to, not just a big comprehensive survey like this, but being able to do really targeted spot kind of surveys about one issue or two issues, and just do it like a quick snapshot. For a few $1,000s we can find out how people think on
and these would be telephone
issue.
surveys.
It would be a telephone survey. We got the numbers. All they got to do is do their randomizer and go out there in a 3 or 4 day period, and we get an answer. And so I think it's going to be a very valuable tool.
It's kind of interesting. It just struck me that, for example, the Quidnick Land Trust proposal down there at the Glen and all that kind of stuff, that might be the kind of thing that you could use that for. Again, at some point we hope we're going to have a referendum on it, but I mean, if they wanted a quick and easy way of finding that out.
The other thing that we were able to do is that when the schools heard that this was part of our annual budget, they expressed some interest. Our school committee is going through the process with the administration of designing developing a strategic plan. And we were able to work with Emily Copeland and the entire school committee and superintendent in drafting some questions that are going to help the schools develop their strategic plan. So that's going to work out well as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, these questions, I'm sure this company probably has a laundry list of questions, but I'm assuming that these were tailored to our town and maybe changed somewhat for our town.
We had some templates to work from. When we first started out with this, we thought, well, we were going to be pretty much doing this survey instrument ourselves, and we started playing around with some templates, some surveys that Mr. Klimm had been involved in out on the Cape, and but then when we got the company on board, they said, no, we have a template. We have let us give you something, and then you can edit it and tailor make it. And so we went through 2 or 3 iterations before we finally got to the final to the final draft.
And what they brought to the table is there's a real science to
Absolutely.
the way you ask a question.
Yeah.
And they're really professionals at it. And so while we talked about general issues or whatever, ultimately we allowed them to, because you depending on how you ask a question, you're building in biases or whatever that are going to produce a result that you might want. These folks are experts at designing a question that rids itself of bias.
See, the thing about a telephone survey is interesting because everybody's got a telephone. I've got some experience with online surveys, and the problem with those is you're only reaching the people that go online to do it.
And you're only reaching the people who want to respond.
They have to actually take an action to respond.
Exactly.
Well, this one it comes to them. Fascinating stuff. Well, I think it's really great. I'm delighted that we're starting this process, and I really look forward to seeing the results. I can see many ways where this might help us going forward with the budget and many other things, because it gives you some ammunition when you say we need this and here's why we need it. 78% of the people think we do. So I just hope our Portsmouth residents take this in the right spirit. I think we can. This is our 375th year. You know, we're trying to get everybody together as our community, and I think this is a great way to do this. Do you guys have any sort of final words here?
We're a separate issue, but we're developing at the direction of our town council. We're going to be developing an annual report, which we've not done in Portsmouth in the past. So that's kind of another first for our 375th anniversary year, that going forward we will produce an annual report that in time will become a historical document. It's really unfortunate. For whatever reason, the state legislature in Massachusetts hundreds of years ago came up with a requirement that every town produce an annual report or whatever, and it really turns into a fascinating historical document where you can go back into the town report in in 1820 and see what was going on, what life was like, and whatever. So unfortunately we haven't done it in the past, but going forward we are, and so I applaud the efforts of the council in spearheading that initiative in our 375th year as well. Back to the survey, there will be some demographic questions at the end of the survey. We're asking, what section of the town they're in, some categories of age or whatever. That's just to make sure that our overall survey is representative of our community. So there'll be some demographic type questions at the end as well.
Okay, and as you said, people should feel free to give their answer. There's no privacy issues involved in any of this, and it's their opportunity to have an input into town government.
Absolutely. We certainly hope we can come back to Portsmouth this week with the results.
That'd be great. I'd love to have
get some charts and graphs up.
Charts and graphs. I love those things. Well, I wish you the best, and I hope our citizens all get out there and, if they're called, participate in this thing. Now, let me ask you this though. Let's say they don't get through to somebody. Will they go to another number?
They will.
Yeah.
Like I said, they're going to make 8 attempts at their core 600 numbers. If they will try their best. If they ultimately can't get a response or can't get through to somebody after 8 tries, they'll go on to another number. The goal is to get 600.
600 responses.
Yeah.
We should be able to do that.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today.
To honor the founding of our town and its subsequent history, the community of Portsmouth plans a series of public events and observances over the course of the year 2013. Planning for these events has begun, and volunteers are needed to participate in developing and conducting these civic events. Join your friends and neighbors and help us all celebrate our 375th year.